Maya Chen sat in the corner of the Galactic Academy's cafeteria, picking at her synthesized protein cube while alien students chatted loudly around her. At 17, she was the youngest human ever accepted into the prestigious military academy on Kepler Station, but that achievement meant nothing to her classmates. The Vorthak cadets towered over everyone with their crystalline exoskeletons gleaming under the artificial lights. The Zephyrian Flight Corps trainees moved with fluid grace, their wing membranes folded elegantly against their backs. Even the brutish Gornok seemed to command more respect than she did. Nobody paid attention to the small human girl who always sat alone. Maya had grown up on Earth's outer colonies, where survival meant learning to move without sound, to hunt without being detected, and to strike before your prey knew death was coming. Her parents had died in a Xeno-Raider attack when she was 12, leaving her to fend for herself in the harsh wilderness of Proxima Colony. For 5 years she had survived by becoming something the galaxy had never seen before, a perfect predator. The Academy's entrance exams had been designed by the Galactic Council to test the various strengths of different species. The Vorthak excelled at strategic thinking and defensive tactics. The Zephyrians dominated aerial combat simulations. The Gornok crushed every physical strength test. Humans, according to galactic conventional wisdom, were mediocre generalists with no particular strengths worth noting. Maya had scored in the 99th percentile on every single test. The evaluation committee had initially suspected cheating. No human had ever performed so well across all categories. They ran the tests again under strict supervision, then a third time with enhanced monitoring. Each time Maya's results remained impossibly high. What they didn't understand was that humans had one advantage no other species possessed: adaptability combined with an almost supernatural ability to learn and improve. Commander Thexvar, a distinguished Vorthak officer with over 3 centuries of military experience, taught advanced combat theory. His crystalline features reflected the holographic battlefield as he addressed the class. Today we will examine the Battle of Rigel 7, where superior Gornok forces overwhelmed a smaller Zephyrian fleet through brute force tactics. Maya raised her hand. The gesture was so unexpected that several students actually turned to look at her. In 3 months at the academy, she had never spoken during class. Yes, Cadet Chen. Commander Thexvar's voice carried a note of surprise. The battle records show the Zephyrians made a tactical error in their opening formation. Maya said quietly, if they had positioned their light cruisers in a delta pattern instead of a straight line, they could have exploited the Gornok's weak peripheral vision and won with minimal losses. The classroom fell silent. Commander Thexvar's compound eyes focused on Maya with new interest. Elaborate on this theory, Cadet. Maya stood up, her small frame barely reaching the shoulder height of most of her classmates. The Gornok have excellent forward vision, but limited peripheral awareness due to their skull structure. The Zephyrian advantage was speed and maneuverability, not firepower. Instead of meeting the Gornok head-on, they should have used hit-and-run tactics. Striking from angles the Gornok couldn't effectively defend. She moved to the holographic display, her fingers dancing over the controls with practiced precision. The battle replayed, but this time with her suggested modifications. The simulated Zephyrian forces danced around the Gornok fleet like ghosts, striking critical points before vanishing into the void. Within minutes, the larger Gornok force was crippled. Impressive, Commander Thexvar admitted. Where did you learn such advanced tactical analysis? Hunting, Maya replied, simply returning to her seat. After class, a group of Vorthak cadets approached her. Their leader, Kozak Tel, was the son of a famous admiral and considered one of the Academy's brightest students. His crystalline features held a mixture of curiosity and condescension. That was an interesting theory, human, he said, his voice carrying the harmonic undertones typical of his species. But theory and practice are very different things. A real commander needs more than clever ideas. Maya looked up at him without expression. You're right. A real commander needs to understand their enemy's weaknesses and exploit them without mercy. Would you care to test that philosophy? Kozak Tel's challenge drew the attention of nearby students. The Academy's combat simulators are available for private practice sessions. Maya considered this for a moment. She had been avoiding the group training exercises, preferring to study alone. But perhaps it was time to show these aliens what they had been overlooking. Single combat or squad tactics? She asked. Squad tactics, Kozaktel replied confidently. I'll choose 4 other cadets. You can do the same. Maya shook her head. I work alone. Laughter rippled through the gathering crowd. The idea of a single cadet, especially a human facing 5 opponents in a tactical simulation, was absurd. Even accounting for the Academy's safety protocols, it would be a massacre. Very well. Kozaktel agreed, his confidence growing. Tomorrow at 1800 hours. Urban warfare scenario. That evening, Maya sat in her small dormitory room studying the personnel files of her opponents. Kozaktel was indeed brilliant, with test scores that rivaled some Academy instructors. His teammates included 2 more Vorthak, a Zephyrian ace pilot, and a Gornok heavy weapons specialist. On paper, they outclassed her in every measurable category, but they had never fought a human. Maya closed her eyes and remembered the lessons learned in Proxima Colony's unforgiving wilderness. The Xeno raiders who had killed her parents had been bigger, stronger, and better armed than a 12-year-old girl. But they had made one crucial mistake. They had underestimated their prey. She spent the next several hours reviewing every piece of available data about the simulation environment. Urban warfare was humanity's specialty, though the galactic military had never recognized it. Humans had been fighting in cities for millennia, learning to use buildings, shadows, and sound to their advantage. Most alien species preferred open battlefields where their natural advantages could shine. The simulation chamber could replicate any environment with perfect fidelity. Maya requested detailed architectural plans of the urban setting, studying every alley, rooftop, and potential hiding spot. While her opponents would likely plan elaborate strategies involving coordinated attacks and overwhelming firepower, Maya would do what humans did best: adapt, improvise, and strike from the shadows. As she prepared for sleep, Maya allowed herself a small smile. Tomorrow, the galaxy would learn why Earth's apex predators had conquered their entire planet before reaching for the stars. Tomorrow, they would finally pay attention to the girl who could strike silently. The simulation chamber hummed to life as Maya stepped through the entrance portal. Around her, the sterile academy walls dissolved into a realistic urban battlefield. Crumbling concrete buildings rose on all sides, their broken windows staring down like empty eyes. Debris scattered the streets, and the acrid smell of simulated smoke filled the air. The Academy's holographic systems were so advanced that Maya could feel the grit beneath her boots and taste the metallic tang of destroyed metal. Her opponents had entered from the opposite side of the city zone. Through her tactical display, Maya could see their heat signatures moving in perfect formation. Kozaktel had positioned his team exactly as she had predicted. Vorthak cadets taking overwatch positions on high buildings, the Zephyrian providing aerial reconnaissance, and the Gornok advancing through the main street with heavy weapons ready. It was textbook alien military doctrine, and it would get them all killed. Maya disabled her tactical display and communication system. The Academy instructors monitoring the exercise would assume equipment failure, but Maya knew that technology could betray you as easily as it helped. She had learned to fight with nothing but her senses and instincts, the way humans had for thousands of years before they reached the stars. She moved through the urban landscape like water flowing around stones, each step carefully placed to avoid creating sound. The other species made noise when they moved. Vorthak crystalline exoskeletons clinked against surfaces. Zephyrian wing membranes rustled in the air. Gornok heavy footsteps announced their presence from blocks away. But Maya had grown up stalking prey that could hear a heartbeat from 50 meters away. The first target presented itself within minutes. One of the Vorthak cadets had taken position on a 3rd-story balcony, using his enhanced vision to scan the streets below. His mistake was believing that threats only came from ground level. Maya had scaled the building's exterior using techniques learned from hunting cliff-dwelling creatures on Proxima Colony. Her fingers found purchase on surfaces that looked impossibly smooth, and her body moved with the fluid efficiency of a natural predator. She emerged behind the Vorthak cadet like a shadow given form. Her simulated combat knife found the gap between his exoskeleton plates with surgical precision. In a real battle, the strike would have severed his primary neural cluster. The simulation registered a fatal hit, and the cadet's weapon system shut down with a soft chime. "Impossible," he whispered, staring at Maya in shock. "I didn't hear anything." Maya was already gone, slipping back into the urban maze before his teammates could respond to his elimination signal. The Zephyrian pilot proved more challenging. His aerial position gave him an excellent view of the battlefield, and his natural flight instincts made him difficult to approach. But Maya had studied his species' behavioral patterns. Zephyrians were creatures of habit, following predictable flight paths and maintaining consistent altitudes for optimal visibility. She waited in the shadow of a partially collapsed overpass, timing the pilot's patrol route. On his third pass, she was ready. As the Zephyrian swooped low to investigate a suspicious movement Maya had deliberately created, she launched herself from the overpass with the calculated precision of a striking hawk. The impact drove both of them toward the ground, but Maya had positioned herself to land on top. Her simulated weapon found the Zephyrian's heart before they hit the pavement. The pilot's confusion was evident in his dying words. "How did you predict my flight path?" Maya didn't answer. Predator and prey relationships were universal, regardless of which planet you came from. 2 down. 3 to go. Kozaktel's voice crackled over the enemy communication channel, which Maya had hacked using techniques that weren't taught in any academy course. "Report status. Veltar? Sky Whisper? Anyone respond?" The remaining Vorthak and Gornak began moving more cautiously, but their caution was based on conventional military thinking. They grouped together for mutual support and swept areas systematically, exactly as their training dictated. What they didn't understand was that human warfare had evolved beyond such predictable patterns. Maya used the city itself as a weapon. She triggered controlled collapses that blocked enemy movement, created sound distractions that drew them into prepared kill zones, and turned their own superior technology against them. When the second Vorthak cadet tried to use his enhanced sensors to track her heat signature, Maya had already anticipated this and rigged a series of thermal decoys using the simulation's environmental systems. The cadet followed the false heat trail into an abandoned building, where Maya waited in perfect stillness. Humans could remain motionless for hours when necessary, a patience that had allowed their ancestors to outlast faster and stronger predators. When the Vorthak entered her prepared position, Maya struck from above, descending from a hiding spot in the ceiling beams like death itself. The Gornak proved the most dangerous opponent, not because of his individual skill, but because his species' natural aggression made him unpredictable. When he realized his teammates were being eliminated one by one, he abandoned all tactical discipline and began destroying buildings indiscriminately, trying to force Maya into the open. This was exactly what Maya had hoped for. Enraged enemies made mistakes, and the Gornak's rampage had revealed his position to every sensor in the area. Maya didn't need to find him. She simply needed to guide him where she wanted him to go. She used hit-and-run tactics, appearing just long enough to fire a few shots before vanishing again. Each attack drew the Gornak deeper into the urban maze, further from any hope of support. The final confrontation came in a narrow alley between 2 collapsed buildings. The Gornak had cornered what he thought was his prey, raising his massive weapon with satisfaction. But Maya had learned long ago that sometimes the best trap was the one your enemy built for himself. The alley was a dead end, but only if you thought in 2 dimensions. Maya had prepared an escape route through the sewers and, more importantly, she had weakened the structural supports of both surrounding buildings. As the Gornak fired his weapon, the recoil and muzzle blast triggered the collapse Maya had carefully orchestrated. Tons of debris crashed down on the narrow space, and the simulation registered the Gornak's elimination by environmental hazard. That left only Kozaktel. The Vorthak squad leader had taken refuge in the most defensible position he could find, a fortified bunker with clear sightlines in all directions. It was a perfect tactical choice according to every military manual in the galaxy. Unfortunately for him, Maya had stopped following military manuals 5 years ago. She didn't attack the bunker. Instead, she waited. Humans were the galaxy's greatest persistence hunters. They could track prey across continents and outlast creatures with twice their speed and strength. Maya settled into a hidden position with the patience of a spider, waiting for its web to vibrate. Hours passed in the simulation. Kozaktel's confidence gradually turned to anxiety, then to desperation. He had weapons, armor, and a superior tactical position, but he was fighting an enemy that refused to engage on his terms. Finally, unable to bear the psychological pressure, he left his bunker to search for his invisible opponent. Maya struck the moment he stepped into the open. Her shot was perfect, taking him center mass before he could raise his weapon. As Kozak Tel fell, his crystalline features reflected confusion and something approaching respect. How? He gasped. You were outgunned, outnumbered, outmaneuvered. How did you win? Maya knelt beside him as the simulation began to fade. You studied war. I lived it. There's a difference. The chamber returned to its sterile academy appearance, but the crowd of spectators remained silent. Word of the exercise had spread throughout the academy, and hundreds of cadets had gathered to watch the monitoring displays. They had expected to see a human cadet taught a humbling lesson about galactic military superiority. Instead, they had witnessed something that challenged every assumption they held about warfare itself. Commander Thexvar approached Maya as she exited the chamber. His compound eyes studied her with newfound interest, and his voice carried a respect that hadn't been there before. Cadet Chen, he said formally, report to my office tomorrow at 800 hours. We need to discuss your unique approach to tactical combat. Maya nodded silently and walked past the staring crowd. As she left the chamber, whispers followed in her wake. For the first time since arriving at the academy, people were paying attention to the girl who could strike silently. Commander Thexvar's office overlooked the academy's main training grounds, where cadets from dozens of species practiced formations under the artificial morning light. Maya sat across from his crystalline desk, studying the collection of military honors and battle commendations that decorated the walls. Each represented a victory in humanity's brief but violent introduction to galactic warfare. Your performance yesterday has created quite a stir among the faculty, Commander Thexvar began, his harmonic voice carrying undertones Maya was learning to interpret as concern. The evaluation committee has been reviewing your simulation data for 12 hours straight. They're calling for additional testing. Maya remained silent, waiting for him to continue. In her experience, adults usually talk themselves into revealing more than they intended if you gave them enough silence to fill. What concerns them is not that you won, the commander continued. Exceptional cadets occasionally achieve unexpected victories through luck or innovation. What concerns them is how you won. Your tactical approach doesn't match any known military doctrine in our databases. Maybe your databases are incomplete, Maya suggested quietly. Commander Thexvar's compound eyes focused on her with sharp interest. Explain. Human military history spans thousands of years and includes conflicts the Galactic Council has never studied. We fought wars before we had written language, before we discovered metal, before we knew other worlds existed. Your databases probably start with humanity's first contact with galactic civilization. The commander accessed his holographic display, data streams reflecting off his crystalline features. Our records show that humans engaged in primitive territorial conflicts using crude weapons and basic tactics. Nothing that would explain your performance yesterday. Maya allowed herself a small smile. That's because you're looking at the wrong conflicts. You're studying our armies and battles and formal wars. But humans didn't become apex predators through organized military action. We evolved as hunters. She stood and moved to the window, watching a squad of Gornok cadets practice assault formations in the courtyard below. Their movements were powerful and coordinated, but predictable. Every species in the galaxy evolved from either prey animals or specialist predators, Maya continued. The Vorthok evolved from hive builders who survived through cooperation and defensive strategies. The Zephyrians descended from aerial hunters who dominated through speed and superior positioning. The Gornok came from pack predators who overwhelmed prey through numbers and brute force. Commander Thexvar followed her reasoning with growing fascination. And humans? Humans evolved from persistence hunters. We weren't the fastest or strongest predators on Earth, but we were the most patient and adaptable. We could track prey for days across any terrain, learn their patterns, and strike when they were most vulnerable. We didn't just hunt animals. We hunted other predators. The implications of her words settled into the room like a cold wind. Commander Thexvar's mandibles clicked. In what Maya recognized as nervous agitation, you're suggesting that human military tactics are based on hunting methodology rather than traditional warfare concepts. I'm not suggesting it, Maya corrected. I'm telling you. Every human conflict in history, from tribal raids to interplanetary wars, has been influenced by our predator heritage. We don't just fight to win territory or resources. We fight to eliminate threats to our pack. Before Commander Thexvar could respond, his communication system chimed urgently. The holographic display showed Admiral Krendall, the Academy's highest-ranking officer and a legendary Vorthak military strategist. "Commander, report to the Strategic Planning Center immediately." The Admiral's harmonic voice carried unmistakable authority. "Bring Cadet Chen with you." The Strategic Planning Center occupied the Academy's most secure level, accessible only to senior staff and cleared personnel. Maya had never been this deep in the facility before. The corridors were lined with advanced security systems that scanned them continuously, and the walls displayed real-time tactical information from active galactic conflicts. Admiral Krendall waited in the center of a vast holographic command center, surrounded by three-dimensional displays showing star systems, fleet movements, and battle projections. His crystalline exoskeleton bore the scars of a dozen major campaigns, and his compound eyes held the calculating intelligence that had made him the Galactic Council's most respected military commander. "Cadet Chen," he said without preamble. 16 hours ago, we received an emergency transmission from the Helix sector. A human colony ship carrying 12,000 civilians has gone missing near the Terminus Nebula." Maya felt her blood chill. The Terminus Nebula was notorious among spacers as a navigation hazard, filled with gravitational anomalies and sensor-dampening particles. More importantly, it was hunting ground for the Void Stalkers. "Pirates?" she asked, though she already suspected the answer. "Worse," Admiral Krendall replied grimly. "Void Stalkers. Our intelligence suggests they've been using the nebula as a base of operations for over a year, striking civilian targets and disappearing before our patrol fleets can respond." The holographic display shifted to show tactical analyses of previous Void Stalker attacks. Maya studied the data with growing concern. The pirates weren't just raiding for supplies or ransom. They were hunting for sport, taking prisoners for unknown purposes and leaving no survivors to report their methods. "The Galactic Council has assembled a rescue fleet," Admiral Krendall continued. 3 heavy cruisers, 2 destroyer squadrons, and a full marine assault battalion. Standard protocol for dealing with pirate operations. "It won't work," Maya said quietly. The Admiral's compound eyes fixed on her with dangerous intensity. "Explain." Maya moved to the holographic display, her fingers manipulating the tactical interface with growing confidence. "The Void Stalkers aren't operating like traditional pirates. Look at their attack patterns." The display highlighted the pirates' previous strikes across the sector. At first glance, they appeared random, but Maya could see the underlying logic that had escaped the Academy's analysts. "They're pack hunters," she continued. "Each attack is designed to test the response time and capabilities of local defense forces. They're learning how galactic military forces operate, adapting their tactics accordingly." She manipulated the display to show predicted fleet movements for the planned rescue operation. "Your standard assault doctrine will walk straight into a prepared kill zone. The Void Stalkers will let your fleet enter the nebula, then use the sensor interference to their advantage. They've probably been preparing ambush positions for months." Admiral Krendall studied the projection with growing unease. "What would you recommend, Cadet?" Maya hesitated. What she was about to suggest went against every principle of galactic military doctrine, but the colonists' lives depended on someone understanding that conventional tactics wouldn't work against an enemy that thought like a predator. "Send me," she said simply. "Commander." Thexvar's mandibles clicked in shock. "Absolutely not. You're a cadet, not a qualified field operative." "That's exactly why it might work," Maya insisted. "The Void Stalkers have studied galactic military responses. They know how your fleets move, how your marines think, how your commanders make decisions, but they've never fought a human who understands their predator mindset." She turned to face Admiral Krendall directly, her voice carrying a confidence that surprised even her. "I can get to the colonists because I can think like the enemy. I know how pack hunters operate, how they establish territory, how they guard their prey." "One cadet against an entire pirate fleet?" The Admiral's harmonic voice carried skeptical undertones. "One hunter against a pack of scavengers," Maya corrected. "There's a difference." The command center fell silent as Admiral Krendall considered her proposal. Around them, the holographic displays continued their silent dance of tactical information, showing the movements of fleets and the calculations of warfare. But Maya knew that all the technology and firepower in the galaxy wouldn't save the colonists if the rescue operation approached the problem as a conventional military engagement. Finally, Admiral Krendall spoke. "The Council would never approve such an operation. The political ramifications alone, Then don't tell them, Maya suggested. Official records can show that I'm participating in an advanced training exercise. A single Academy shuttle investigating nebula navigation hazards wouldn't attract attention from either the Council or the Void Stalkers. Commander Thexavar stepped forward, his crystalline features reflecting obvious concern. Admiral, with respect, this proposal is extraordinarily dangerous. We would be sending an untested cadet into hostile territory with no support. The colonists don't have support either, Maya pointed out, and every hour we spend debating gives the Void Stalkers more time to do whatever they're planning with their prisoners. Admiral Krendal studied the tactical displays for several long minutes, his compound eyes calculating probabilities and risks with mechanical precision. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of command decision. Cadet Chen, you will report to Hangar Bay 7 in 2 hours. Commander Thexvar will brief you on available intelligence regarding Void Stalker operations. This mission is classified beyond your current CC. The Academy shuttle, Silent Arrow, drifted through the Terminus Nebula's outer edge like a ghost among the swirling particles of cosmic dust. Maya sat in the pilot's seat, her hands steady on the manual controls as she guided the small craft deeper into the sensor-dampening void. The shuttle's systems were running in complete stealth mode, making her nearly invisible to anything except direct visual contact. She had been traveling for 18 hours, using skills learned from hunting in Proxima Colony's treacherous asteroid fields. Unlike most galactic pilots who relied heavily on automated navigation and sensor arrays, Maya could fly by instinct and observation. The nebula's gravitational anomalies that confused computer systems were simply environmental factors to be read and anticipated. The intelligence briefing had painted a grim picture of the Void Stalkers' capabilities. They weren't ordinary pirates seeking quick profits from cargo raids. Their leader, known only as the Harvester, commanded a fleet of modified vessels designed for stealth operations and prisoner capture. More disturbing were reports of their treatment of captives. Survivors from previous attacks spoke of psychological experimentation and worse, horrors that galactic sensors had classified. Beyond public access, Maya's scanner detected the first trace of enemy activity 3 hours into the nebula's dense core. A faint energy signature that could have been background radiation, except her enhanced human pattern recognition identified it as the distinctive exhaust trail of Stalker propulsion systems. She followed the trail like a bloodhound tracking scent, letting her quarry's own movements guide her toward their lair. The Void Stalker base revealed itself gradually through the nebula's swirling darkness. It was a hollowed-out asteroid, its surface bristling with weapon emplacements and sensor arrays. Docking bays had been carved into its sides, and Maya counted at least 12 enemy vessels of various sizes. The stolen colony ship, Harmony's Dream, hung in a capture cradle like a fly in a spider's web. Maya powered down her shuttle systems to minimum levels and drifted into a concealed position behind a cluster of smaller asteroids. Through her scope, she could see movement within the base's transparent sections, hundreds of figures moving in what appeared to be organized activity. The colonists were still alive, but for how much longer remained unclear. She spent 6 hours studying the enemy base, learning their patrol patterns, and identifying weak points in their security. The Void Stalkers operated with the arrogance of predators who had never faced serious resistance. Their sentries were lazy, their patrol routes predictable, and their communication protocols sloppy. They had grown comfortable in their hunting ground, never expecting to become prey themselves. Maya's first strike came during the base's night cycle, when activity dropped to minimum levels. She used her shuttle's emergency thruster pack to make a silent approach to the asteroid's outer surface, moving through the vacuum with the fluid grace of a swimmer navigating underwater currents. Her target was an auxiliary sensor array that monitored the approaches to the main docking bays. The Void Stalker technician monitoring the array never heard her coming. Maya's combat training had taught her dozens of ways to disable an opponent quietly, and her experience hunting dangerous prey had perfected those techniques. She eliminated the sentry and sabotaged the sensor array within minutes, creating a blind spot in the pirates' surveillance network. Her next objective lay deeper within the asteroid base. The colonists were being held in converted cargo bays near the facility's core, guarded by automated systems and regular patrols. Maya infiltrated the base through maintenance tunnels that the Void Stalkers had ignored in their confidence that no rescue attempt would ever reach them. The corridors of the Pirate base were a maze of stolen technology and improvised modifications. Maya moved through them like a shadow, avoiding the few pirates she encountered and leaving no trace of her presence. Her enhanced human ability to remain perfectly still for extended periods allowed her to hide in plain sight when patrol groups passed by. The first group of colonists she found were being held in what had once been a cargo processing center. 73 humans, mostly women and children, huddled together in conditions that made Maya's anger burn cold and focused. The guards were two stalker pirates armed with energy weapons and wearing the distinctive black armor that marked them as part of the Harvester's elite troops. Maya watched the guards for an hour, learning their patterns and identifying their weaknesses. They were professionals, but they had been guarding helpless prisoners for too long. Their attention had grown slack, and their conversation revealed details about the base's security that would prove invaluable. She struck during a shift change, using the brief moment of confusion to eliminate both guards without raising an alarm. The colonists stared at her in shock as she emerged from the shadows, a teenage girl in academy fatigues who had somehow penetrated the most secure pirate base in the sector. "I'm Maya Chen, Galactic Academy," she whispered to the group's apparent leader, an older woman with the bearing of a ship's officer. "We're getting you out of here." "There are too many of them," the woman replied, her voice hoarse from captivity. "The Harvester has over 300 fighters, and they've been expecting a rescue attempt." "This whole place is a trap," Maya nodded grimly. "I know. That's why I'm not here to fight them. I'm here to hunt them." She spent the next hour gathering intelligence from the freed colonists. The information they provided painted an even darker picture of the Void Stalkers' operations. The pirates weren't just capturing ships for ransom or slave labor. They were conducting experiments on their prisoners, testing new forms of psychological warfare that they planned to use against galactic civilization. The Harvester himself was apparently something beyond ordinary piracy. The colonists described him as a figure of pure malevolence, who seemed to take personal pleasure in breaking the spirits of his captives. He had been questioning the colony ship's officers about human military capabilities, particularly their psychological weaknesses and tactical patterns. Maya realized that the Void Stalkers were preparing for something much larger than random piracy. They were gathering intelligence for a major offensive against human space, using captured civilians as test subjects for weapons of terror. "Where are the other prisoners?" Maya asked. "Scattered throughout the base in smaller groups," the officer replied. "The Harvester keeps families separated to maintain psychological pressure. There are at least 400 more colonists in various holding areas." Maya calculated quickly. Rescuing scattered groups of prisoners from a heavily defended base would be nearly impossible using conventional tactics, but she wasn't planning to use conventional tactics. "I need you to organize the people here," she told the officer. "When I give the signal, you'll need to move fast and follow my instructions exactly. We're not escaping. We're taking this base." The woman stared at her in disbelief. One Academy cadet against 300 pirates? Maya checked her equipment and prepared to move deeper into the base. "Not one cadet, one human. There's a difference the Void Stalkers are about to learn." She disappeared back into the shadows, leaving the freed colonists to wonder how a teenage girl planned to accomplish what a fleet of warships couldn't. But Maya had learned long ago that the most dangerous predator wasn't always the largest or strongest. Sometimes it was the one that nobody saw coming until it was too late. The Harvester had made one crucial mistake in his intelligence gathering. He had studied human military doctrine and psychological profiles, but he had never encountered a human who fought with the instincts of a natural-born hunter. Maya was about to teach him that there were aspects of human nature that couldn't be found in any database or tactical manual. The hunt was about to begin, and for the first time in their predatory careers, the Void Stalkers were going to experience what it felt like to be prey. Maya moved through the Void Stalker base like death itself. Her presence felt only in the growing paranoia of the pirates who began finding their sentries missing without explanation. She had adopted the ancient human strategy of psychological warfare, turning the enemy's own fear against them while systematically dismantling their defenses from within. Her first priority was intelligence gathering. The base's command center lay at the asteroid's core, heavily guarded and protected by multiple security layers. But Maya had learned that the most secure facilities often overlooked their most mundane access points. She infiltrated the command level through a ventilation shaft that the pirates had dismissed as too small for any serious threat. From her concealed position above the command center, Maya observed the Harvester for the first time. He was unlike any alien species she had encountered at the academy. Tall and skeletal with elongated limbs that moved with predatory grace. His skin had a translucent quality that revealed the dark veins beneath. His eyes were completely black, lacking pupils or iris, and when he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that seemed designed to induce fear in other species. But Maya felt no fear. She had faced worse things in Proxima Colony's wilderness, and she recognized the Harvester for what he truly was, a bully who had grown powerful by preying on the helpless. He commanded through terror because he lacked the true strength that came from facing equal opponents. The command center's displays showed the locations of all prisoner groups throughout the base. Maya memorized the layout while listening to the Harvester's conversations with his lieutenants. They were planning something called the Final Harvest, a coordinated attack on 3 human colonies that would provide them with thousands of new test subjects for their psychological experiments. The humans respond predictably to fear stimuli, the Harvester was saying to a group of his officers. Their emotional attachments make them vulnerable to manipulation. Once we perfect the terror protocols, we can pacify entire worlds without firing a shot. Maya's anger burned cold and focused as she realized the true scope of the Void Stalkers' plans. They weren't just pirates or even conventional conquerors. They were preparing to weaponize human psychology itself, turning the species' capacity for empathy and emotional bonds into instruments of their own destruction. She slipped away from the command center with a complete understanding of the base's layout and the enemy's operational plans. Now came the most dangerous phase of her mission, turning the hunters into the hunted. Maya's campaign of psychological warfare began in the base's lower levels, where younger pirates stood guard over supply dumps and maintenance areas. These were the least experienced members of the Harvester's crew, easily rattled and prone to making mistakes when under pressure. She struck like a ghost, eliminating sentries in ways that left their comrades confused and frightened. Sometimes a guard would simply vanish, leaving only his weapon behind. Other times, sentries would be found unconscious with no memory of their attacker. Maya varied her methods deliberately, creating an atmosphere of unpredictable menace that began to erode the pirates' confidence. The psychological effect spread through the base faster than any computer virus. Pirates began reporting strange sounds in empty corridors, shadows that moved when no one was there, and equipment that malfunctioned for no apparent reason. Maya had learned these techniques from studying Earth's most successful military units, who understood that defeating an enemy's will to fight was often more effective than destroying their ability to fight. Within 12 hours, the Harvester's carefully maintained atmosphere of control began to crack. Pirates demanded to work in groups, refusing to take solitary assignments. Patrol routes were abandoned when sentries failed to report in. The base's operational efficiency dropped as fear replaced discipline. Maya used this growing chaos to free more prisoner groups, always striking when the guards were most distracted by reports of mysterious disappearances. Each liberation was carefully timed to maximize confusion while providing her with additional intelligence about the base's weaknesses. The second group of colonists she freed included several former military personnel who had been serving as security aboard the colony ship. Their leader, a grizzled veteran named Captain Torres, studied Maya with the calculating gaze of a professional soldier. "What's your extraction plan, cadet?" he asked quietly. "Even if you free all the prisoners, we're still trapped in the middle of a pirate fleet with no way off this rock." Maya had been considering the same problem. A conventional escape would be impossible without spacecraft, and the colonists included too many elderly and children to attempt a fighting withdrawal through the base's corridors. "We're not extracting," she told the captain. "We're taking over." Captain Torres raised an eyebrow. 500 civilians against 300 pirates? The odds aren't exactly in our favor. "The odds assume this is a conventional military engagement," Maya replied. "But the Void Stalkers have made a fatal mistake. They've been studying human psychology to use it against us, but they never considered that the same knowledge could be turned against them." She outlined her plan to the veteran officer, who listened with growing amazement. Maya intended to use the pirates' own fear and paranoia as weapons, turning the base's security systems against its defenders while coordinating a prisoner uprising that would strike at the moment of maximum enemy confusion. The Harvester thinks he understands human nature, Maya explained. He sees our emotional bonds and protective instincts as weaknesses to be exploited. What he doesn't realize is that those same qualities make us incredibly dangerous when we're fighting to protect others. Captain Torres nodded slowly. You're talking about turning this into a war of survival rather than a military operation. Humans have always been at their most dangerous when they're fighting for their families. Maya spent the next several hours moving through the base, coordinating with the freed prisoners and preparing for the final phase of her plan. The Harvester's psychological experiments had taught him about human fear and despair, but he had never witnessed human rage directed toward a clearly defined enemy. The pirates were about to learn that there was a significant difference between terrorizing helpless civilians and facing humans who had decided to fight back with everything they possessed. Maya had studied the lessons of Earth's greatest military victories, and she knew that ordinary people could accomplish extraordinary things when they were fighting for something greater than themselves. As she prepared for the final assault, Maya allowed herself to think about the colonists who had died during the initial capture of their ship. They would never see their families again or witness the new world they had been traveling to establish. But their sacrifice would not be meaningless. If their fellow colonists could prevent the Harvester from visiting the same fate on other human communities, the Voidstalkers had made one fundamental error in their assessment of human nature. They had studied humanity's capacity for suffering, but ignored its capacity for justice. Maya was about to remind them that humans had not become the galaxy's most adaptable species by accepting defeat quietly. The final hunt was about to begin, and this time, the predators would learn what it felt like to become prey. The uprising began at precisely 0347 hours, during the base's quiet period when most of the Voidstalkers were either sleeping or engaged in minimal security duties. Maya had spent 3 days infiltrating every major system in the asteroid facility, turning the pirates' own technology against them with modifications they would never detect until it was too late. Her first strike was against the base's power grid. Using techniques learned from sabotaging Xeno-Raider equipment on Proxima Colony, Maya had rewired several key distribution nodes to create cascading failures throughout the facility. The lights went out in coordinated waves, section by section, plunging the base into darkness while leaving the prisoner areas illuminated by emergency power she had carefully preserved. The Harvester's voice echoed through the emergency communication system, his harmonic tones carrying barely controlled fury. All units report to stations immediately. Implement Security Protocol 7. Find the source of these system failures. But his orders fell on increasingly empty air. Maya's psychological campaign had achieved its intended effect. The pirates were no longer functioning as a disciplined military unit. Fear had fragmented their command structure, and many of his subordinates were too terrified to leave their barricaded positions to investigate the spreading chaos. Captain Torres led the first group of liberated colonists in a coordinated assault on the base's armory. The former military personnel among the prisoners had organized their fellow captives into effective fighting units, using improvised weapons and knowledge of the facility's layout that Maya had provided. They moved through the darkened corridors with the desperate efficiency of people fighting for their lives and the lives of their families. Maya herself had a different target, the Harvester's personal command chamber. While the colonists battled for control of the base's strategic positions, she slipped through the chaos like a wraith, using the confusion and darkness to mask her approach to the facility's most heavily defended location. The command chamber was protected by both automated defenses and the Harvester's elite guard, but Maya had been studying their security protocols for days. She knew that the pirates relied too heavily on technology and not enough on basic situational awareness. Their sensors were calibrated to detect large groups of attackers, not a single individual moving with perfect stealth. She eliminated the outer guard silently, using techniques that left no evidence of her presence. The automated systems registered nothing unusual, their programming unable to compensate for an opponent who understood how to move between their detection patterns. Maya had learned patience from hunting prey that could sense the slightest disturbance, and she applied those skills now with lethal precision. The inner chamber revealed the true scope of the Harvester's operations. Holographic displays showed detailed psychological profiles of human colonies throughout the sector, complete with plans for inducing mass panic and social collapse. The pirate leader had been preparing for a campaign of terror that would have crippled human expansion in this region of space. The harvester himself stood before the main display, his elongated form rigid with rage as reports of the uprising flooded in from throughout the base. His black eyes reflected the flickering lights of emergency alerts, and his voice carried harmonics that would have induced fear in most species. "Impossible," he hissed to his remaining lieutenants. "Humans are prey animals. They cannot coordinate effective resistance without external leadership. Find their commander and eliminate them." Maya stepped from the shadows behind him, her combat knife at his throat before his guards could react. "You found her." The harvester's lieutenants raised their weapons, but Maya's position made any shot too dangerous to their leader. The pirate commander's translucent skin rippled with patterns of anger and confusion as he processed the impossible situation. "You're a child," he said, his harmonic voice carrying disbelief. "A single human juvenile. This is impossible." "Your mistake was thinking that humans are prey," Maya replied quietly. "We're not. We're the species that hunted every other predator on our planet to extinction or submission. We're persistence hunters who can track our quarry across continents and outlast creatures twice our size and strength." She pressed the knife closer to his throat, feeling his alien pulse quicken against the blade. "You studied human psychology, but you never understood human nature. We don't just fight to survive. We fight to protect our pack, and you threatened our pack." The reports from throughout the base confirmed what Maya already knew. The colonists were winning their battle for control of the facility. Years of living on the frontier had taught them to adapt quickly to dangerous situations, and their motivation to protect their families had transformed them into formidable fighters. "Your base is lost," Maya informed the harvester. "Your fleet is next. I've been transmitting the location of this facility to the Galactic Academy for the past 6 hours. Admiral Krendl's task force will arrive within the day." The harvester's black eyes widened as he realized the scope of his defeat. "You planned this entire operation? The infiltration, the psychological warfare, the uprising. You orchestrated everything." "I learned from the best teacher," Maya replied. "You showed me exactly how to break down an enemy's will to fight by making them afraid. The only difference is that I targeted the right enemy." She activated her emergency beacon, sending a signal that would guide the rescue fleet directly to the asteroid base. The Void Stalker's reign of terror in the Terminus Nebula was ending, not through overwhelming military force, but through the actions of a single human who understood that sometimes the most effective weapon was the enemy's own fear. Captain Torres's voice crackled through the communication system. "Command chamber secured. All prisoner groups have been liberated. Base weapon systems are under our control." The harvester's remaining lieutenants looked to their leader for orders, but found only a broken predator, who had finally encountered prey that fought back more effectively than he had ever imagined possible. The psychological advantage that had made the Void Stalkers so dangerous was gone, replaced by the crushing realization that they had been outmaneuvered by the very species they had considered inferior. Maya kept her knife at the harvester's throat while she activated the base's communication array. When Admiral Krendl's image appeared on the holographic display, his compound eyes reflected surprise and something approaching awe. "Cadet Chen reporting mission accomplished, sir," she said formally. "The colonists are secure, and the Void Stalker base is under our control." "Outstanding work, Cadet," the Admiral replied. "The task force will arrive in 14 hours to take custody of the prisoners and secure the facility." As the communication ended, Maya finally allowed herself to feel the exhaustion that had been building for days. But more than tiredness, she felt satisfaction. The 12,000 colonists would return to their families alive, and the harvesters' plans for terrorizing human space had been permanently ended. The Void Stalkers had learned, too late, that there was one aspect of human nature that couldn't be found in any psychological profile or tactical database. When humans decided to hunt, they became the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. Maya had reminded them that the species which had conquered Earth hadn't done so by accepting defeat quietly. The girl who could strike silently had struck one final time, and the darkness between the stars was a little safer for it. 6 months after the Terminus Nebula incident, Maya stood before the assembled faculty and cadets of the Galactic Academy, wearing the insignia of a full lieutenant despite being only 18 years old. The ceremony hall buzzed with representatives from dozens of species, all gathered to witness something unprecedented in galactic military history. Admiral Krendall approached the podium, his crystalline features reflecting the lights of the holographic displays that surrounded them. Behind him, images cycled through scenes from the Void Stalker base liberation, colonists embracing their rescuers, captured pirate vessels being secured by Academy forces, and the massive intelligence cache that had revealed the true scope of the terrorist threat to human space. Ladies, gentlemen, and honored beings, the Admiral began, his harmonic voice carrying to every corner of the hall. Today we recognize not just exceptional bravery, but a fundamental shift in our understanding of military strategy and human capabilities. Maya remained at attention as the Admiral recounted the events in the Terminus Nebula, though she noticed that the official version omitted certain details about her methods. The Academy was still struggling to incorporate her unconventional tactics into their standard curriculum, and some faculty members remained uncomfortable with the implications of her success. The intelligence gathered from the Voidstalker base revealed a conspiracy that extended far beyond simple piracy, Admiral Krendall continued. Computer records showed plans for coordinated attacks on 17 human colonies, using psychological warfare techniques designed to cripple entire worlds without conventional military engagement. The audience stirred at this revelation. The full scope of the Harvester's plans had been classified until now, but Maya had insisted that the galactic community needed to understand the true nature of the threat they had faced. Lieutenant Chen's actions prevented what could have been the most devastating terrorist campaign in galactic history, the Admiral concluded. But more than that, she demonstrated that human military doctrine requires fundamental reassessment. Commander Thexvar stepped forward, carrying a datapad that contained Maya's new assignment orders. His compound eyes met hers with a respect that would have been unimaginable 6 months earlier. Lieutenant, the Galactic Council has approved the establishment of a new tactical division within Academy structure, he announced. The Human Strategic Studies Department will focus on unconventional warfare, psychological operations, and adaptive combat doctrine. You have been selected as its first director. Maya accepted the orders without expression, though inwardly she felt a mixture of pride and apprehension. The Academy was essentially asking her to teach other beings how to think like human predators, a responsibility that carried significant implications for the balance of power in galactic civilization. After the ceremony, Maya found herself in Admiral Krendall's office once again, but this time the atmosphere was completely different. Instead of an uncertain cadet facing disciplinary review, she was now a decorated officer being consulted on matters of strategic importance. The Council has been debating the implications of your success for months, the Admiral admitted. Some members are concerned that teaching human combat methodologies to other species could destabilize existing military hierarchies. Maya understood the concern. Every major galactic power had built their military doctrine around their species' natural advantages. The Vorthak relied on defensive strategy and technological superiority. The Zephyrians dominated through air power and mobility. The Gornok used overwhelming force and numerical advantage. But humans had proven that adaptability and psychological warfare could overcome all of these traditional approaches. In the wrong hands, human military techniques could potentially be used to upset the balance of power that had maintained galactic peace for centuries. What are your recommendations, Lieutenant? Admiral Krendall asked. Maya had been thinking about this problem since her promotion. Selective training only, she replied. Not every species can effectively use human tactics, and not every human understands them instinctively. We need to identify individuals who have the right psychological profile and natural aptitude. She moved to the holographic display, manipulating the interface to show psychological assessment data from Academy cadets. Human military effectiveness comes from our evolutionary background as persistence hunters and pack cooperators. Species that evolved as prey animals or specialist predators think differently. They can learn our tactics, but they can't internalize our strategic mindset. The Admiral studied the data with growing interest. You're suggesting that human military doctrine is more than just tactics and techniques. It's a fundamental way of approaching conflict that's rooted in evolutionary psychology. Exactly, Maya confirmed. The Voidstalkers made the mistake of thinking they could understand human nature by studying our behavior patterns. But they never grasped that our entire approach to conflict is shaped by millions of years of evolutionary pressure that no other species has experienced. Her analysis had broader implications than military strategy. Human expansion into galactic civilization had been constrained by the assumption that humanity was a minor power, with no particular advantages over more established species. The Terminus Nebula incident had shattered that assumption and forced the galactic community to reconsider humanity's potential role. The Council is also concerned about human ambitions, Admiral Krendall admitted. Some members worry that discovering your species' military potential could lead to expansionist policies that destabilize the current order. Maya had expected this concern. Throughout galactic history, species that achieved military superiority had often used it to dominate their neighbors. The fear was that humans might follow the same pattern once they fully understood their own capabilities. That's exactly why the training program needs to be carefully controlled, Maya replied. We're not teaching humans to be better conquerors. We're teaching the galaxy to defend itself against the kind of threats that conventional military doctrine can't handle. She gestured toward intelligence reports from across the galaxy, highlighting patterns that had emerged since the Voidstalker incident. The Harvester wasn't unique. There are other groups out there using psychological warfare and unconventional tactics against civilian populations. The established military powers don't know how to fight them because they're still thinking in terms of traditional warfare. Admiral Krendall nodded slowly. You're proposing that human military knowledge be used to strengthen galactic security rather than advance human interests specifically. I'm proposing that we teach the galaxy to hunt the hunters, Maya corrected. Every species has predators. Most have learned to deal with conventional threats. But when something new emerges, something that doesn't follow the established patterns, they need different tools. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from the Academy's Intelligence Division. A new crisis was developing in the Outer Rim territories, where several non-human colonies had gone silent under mysterious circumstances. The initial report suggested patterns similar to the Voidstalker operations, but with troubling differences that indicated an even more sophisticated enemy. Admiral Krendall looked at the incoming data with grim recognition. It appears that your new department will have its first field test sooner than expected, Lieutenant. Maya studied the intelligence reports with the focused attention of a predator analyzing tracks. Whatever was happening in the Outer Rim represented a new kind of threat, one that would require all of her skills and knowledge to understand and counter. I'll need a mixed species team, she said finally. Volunteers who can adapt to unconventional tactics and aren't bound by traditional military thinking. As she prepared to face this new challenge, Maya reflected on how much had changed since her first day at the Academy. She was no longer the overlooked human cadet sitting alone in the cafeteria. She had become something the galaxy had never seen before. A human officer who understood that sometimes the most effective weapon against monsters was another monster. The girl who could strike silently had found her place in the galaxy, and that place was hunting in the darkness between the stars, protecting civilizations from threats they couldn't imagine and enemies they couldn't see coming. But more importantly, she had proven that humans deserved attention, not because they were loud or aggressive or technologically superior, but because they understood something fundamental about the nature of survival that the rest of the galaxy was only beginning to comprehend. The hunt never truly ended. It only found new prey.